The Department of Basic Education has been accused of not complying with a court order to admit children who don't have identity documents to schools. The Centre for Child Law at the University of Pretoria has dealt with 12 cases so far of children being turned away. Senior Centre Attorney Anjuli Maistry talks to us about this matter. Very good morning to you. A very disturbing matter indeed, isn't it? Tell us about your findings.
At the beginning of the year, the Centre for Child Law had accumulated about 12 cases of children being turned away from school on account of the fact that they didn't have any documentation. And in addition to that, we liaised with a number of other non-governmental organizations who do the same work as us and discovered that organizations such as Lawyers for Human Rights, for example, had accumulated about 24 cases in Section 27, about 2 or 3. And so it became quite concerning for us that despite the judgment at the end of last year, children were still being turned away on account of not having documentation.
And it's South Africans and foreigners as well, I believe. And the school, regardless of where you come from or regardless of having papers or not, is not allowed to turn you away.
So that's the purpose, and that's what is at the crux of the judgment that was handed down in December last year, that regardless of your documentation status, whether or not you have documents, a birth certificate, a study permit, and regardless of your nationality, so whether you're a South African child or whether or not you're a non-national child from another country that isn't South Africa, you can't be turned away on account of your lack of documentation.
All right. And I believe that at least 1 million children have been affected by this.
It would have affected 1 million children who were in school if the admissions policy had been enforced. So there were approximately 1 million children who were in school who didn't have documents. And if the admissions policy was enforced and children were turned away on account of not having documentation, or children were being removed from school on account of not having documentation, then it would have affected that number of children.
All right, okay, thanks for clearing that up. So what can parents do, rather, if they have been affected, considering the court judgment?
So the court judgment now has on the back of it a circular that's been issued by the Department of Education very recently. It must have been about 10 days ago that they issued the circular. And the circular confirms the contents of the judgment and that a child can't be turned away on account of their lack of documentation. And that circular is a Department of Basic Education circular which has been distributed to schools and district offices around the country. And so we are in the process of monitoring and ensuring that that circular is complied with. And so far, what we have found is that schools are now beginning to admit children due to the contents of the circular.
I guess the problem is those families who don't have access to this sort of information and where it leaves them.
Precisely. That's one of the things that we're very concerned about. There are probably large numbers of children who are unaware of the fact that there's been a judgment and that there's currently a circular who the department needs to, in some way, reach out to ensure that they know to come forward and that they're able to access an education now.
Well, thanks for talking to us about this, Anjuli Maistry.